Belle Goes to the Moon by GmaJ. There once was a little girl with a big smile whose name was Belle. Every evening at bedtime she would fall asleep looking at her nightlight, which was shaped like a moon and glowed softly in the dark. And all night long she would dream of flying through the stars in the sky and bouncing around on the big, beautiful moon. When Belle grew up, she wanted to be an astronaut. An astronaut is a person who flies big rocket ships into space, but only a few of them have ever been on the moon because it is very hard to get there and the moon is a long, long way out in space. But Belle was a clever little girl, and she knew that if she worked hard at school, then she might someday really go into space. When Belle was in grade 1, everyone in her class learned about the solar system. They found out that the planet we live on is called Earth and is like a big ball floating in space. Earth floats around the sun, and there are 7 other planets, plus Pluto, which is a bit smaller than a planet, that also go in circles or orbits around our sun. Later, in arts and crafts class, all the kids made solar system mobiles. If you would like to make one, the instructions are in the information section at the end of this video. Belle had already learned about the different planets and seen photos of them in space, so she chose colours for her mobile that matched each planet. Earth was blue and white, Mars was a browny red, and so on. She was so excited about the project that she finished early, and her teacher let her add a bright red rocket ship and a comet to her mobile. When Belle got home from school that day, she rushed straight to her room and hung the mobile from the ceiling. Then she turned her moonlight on and lay on her bed looking up. The glow from the moon lit up all the beautiful colours in the mobile, and she was very proud of what she'd made. That night, after she went to bed, after story time, after cuddles and kisses, Belle fell asleep watching the planets twirl and sparkle, and she dreamed she was flying through the solar system in her big red rocket ship. Belle was becoming a big girl now and was in grade 3. She still worked hard at school and enjoyed learning about lots of different things. One day she was talking to her teacher about what she wanted to be when she grew up, and her teacher told her that astronauts have to be really fit and healthy. So Belle started playing sports after school and had dancing lessons every Saturday morning to improve her health and balance. She also made lots of new friends and had lots of great fun, and her team even won a couple of trophies. Every day, Belle made sure she ate mostly healthy things so that her body could be strong and healthy too. And every night, after she brushed her teeth, when she curled up in bed under the light from her little moon and beneath the shadow of her mobile, she would read books about suns, planets, meteors, comets, stars, black holes, and many, many other moons. When Belle was in grade 5, she joined a group of astronomers who were people of all ages who enjoyed looking at and studying stars and space. Every Friday night, they would drive out to a big telescope, which is something that makes things that are far, far away look much closer. They would all take turns finding and looking closely at different stars, planets, and sometimes they even saw meteor showers and comets. Twice a year, Belle and her family would go camping with the other astronomers and their families. They would drive a long way from any cities or big towns because the bright lights make it much harder to see the stars at night time. They all took their best telescopes, and Belle loved to sleep under the stars, all snuggled up in her sleeping bag. She would drift off to sleep with the many, many stars of the Milky Way and her beloved moon blazing above her. In grade 7, Belle learned all about the Australian Space Agency at high school, how they help train people to be astronauts, as well as many of the other jobs that are needed for rockets and shuttles to be built and sent into space. She also learned about the International Space Station, which was a special building that had been built right out in space, where a small group of astronauts from all around the world lived and worked. Belle also learned about the jobs astronauts do in space. Some of the main jobs are flying rockets to deliver supplies like food and spare parts, running science experiments, launching big telescopes like Hubble and satellites, repairing anything that breaks down in space, and even astronauts have to do their chores. They all take turns cleaning and tidying up. Here are some photos of astronauts working in space. The first picture is of a space seed experiment on the ISS, or International Space Station. The next photo shows an astronaut learning to work in zero gravity. It was also taken on the ISS. In the last photo, we can see an astronaut in a spacesuit on a spacewalk, working on a satellite. When Belle was in grade 9, all her hard work paid off and she won a place in a group of students from her state who went to stay at the Australian Space Agency, the ASA, for 2 weeks during the school holidays. In the first week of space camp, she and the other kids went to special classes on rocket fuel and flight, and then they got to build and fly their very own little rockets. Belle's team came second place in the competition for the highest flight. During the second week of camp, they split into different groups, depending on what jobs they would most like to do when they were older. Belle, of course, was in the astronaut group. The future astronauts were taught what they would need to do to get a job in space. If you're interested later, you can look this up in the information section of the video. On the last day of camp, everyone who attended got their own rocket trophy to take home. And because Belle had done so well in all her activities and tests, her rocket was gold. When space camp was over, Belle flew home, and after she'd told her family all about her trip, she went to her bedroom and put her trophy up right next to her old moon nightlight above her bed. And all that night, like so many others, she dreamed of riding rocket ships into space. While Belle was in grade 12, something very special happened out in space. One of the biggest space agencies in the world, NASA, finished building a special space station on the moon, and a small group of astronauts started living and working there. It was called Lunar Space Station because lunar is a very old word for moon. Belle was very excited because it meant that if she could become an astronaut one day, then she might be able to really truly live on the moon, even for a short time. Belle was so excited that she spent the rest of that year studying extra hard at school. She also got a job on the weekends at a local shop, and with the money she earned, she paid for scuba diving lessons in the school holidays. She loved diving down into the ocean and swimming with all the wonderful sea creatures. Whenever she put on her wetsuit, goggles, and oxygen mask, she imagined she was putting on a spacesuit. And whenever she went down into the water, it really felt like she was floating in space. She even imagined that the sea creatures swimming around her were funny alien creatures. Belle was 18 now and growing up to be a lovely young woman. Because she had worked hard, she did very well in her final school exams, and her family had a big party to celebrate. After the Christmas holidays, she left home and moved into the city to go to university. She was sad that she didn't see her family as much, but she was also excited because she was going to learn so much more about space and about other important things too. Belle was studying astrophysics, which is a big word made up of 2 little words. Astro means star, and physics is the study of forces like gravity. She studied at uni for 6 years and learned how to do experiments and how to write essays and science reports. But her favourite thing about uni was that she got to use a much, much bigger telescope than the one she had used with her old astronomy group. Now she got to see and to learn and to explore further and further out into space. While Belle was at university exercising her mind, she didn't forget about exercising her body. She joined a rock climbing group and exercised 3 times a week at the uni gym. She would also go out dancing with her friends on the weekend if she didn't have to study or work. To help pay for her little unit and her bills, she worked 3 nights a week and every Saturday morning at a sushi shop, which was great because Belle loved sushi. In her last years at university, while she was getting her advanced degree in astrophysics, Belle's family helped her pay for flying lessons. She knew that to become a pilot astronaut, which were the astronauts who actually flew the rockets and shuttles, she would have to learn to fly a jet aeroplane and be a pilot for at least 1,000 hours. This was expensive, but Belle had been saving money in a special bank account that she called her space fund, and she only used that money for becoming an astronaut, even though sometimes she would have liked to spend it on other things. When Belle turned 25, her family threw her a very special space party. They were very proud of everything she'd done to make her dreams come true, so they invited all of her friends and the people she had met at the Australian Space Agency over the years. After she had cut her birthday cake, everyone gathered around and the head of the agency gave her an envelope and told her it was a birthday present from the ASA. When she opened it, she realised it was a letter telling her that she had been accepted into the Astronaut Training unit the following year. Belle was so happy that she and her friends and family celebrated all night long. The next 2 years were very busy for Belle. Most of her time was spent in mission training and doing many, many tests. The trainees spent lots of time in a spacesuit underwater, practicing different jobs. They also had to spend time in an altitude chamber in both low and high pressures, and they were spun around really fast in the machine to get used to high forces of gravity. You'll learn about these things in school one day. But Belle's favourite training was flying in a really fast jet that goes up, then up, then down, over and over, which means that every few minutes they would be weightless for a small time and would float inside the plane, just like in space. It made her feel a little sick at first, but she concentrated on what she was doing and then had a lot of fun. During the last month of the training, Belle got her first taste of real space. She and the other trainees were passengers on a space shuttle which flew to the edge of space and back. It was the trainees' first ever time in real space, so they spent a few hours doing jobs in zero-G before the shuttle came back down to Earth. After Belle had finished her training, she was offered a job at the Australian Space Agency as a co-pilot astronaut. Even though she had finished her basic astronaut training, she still had a year of specialist training to do before she could actually fly a shuttle into space. But she had already been assigned to a mission that would launch in 1 year. The mission was to co-pilot a space shuttle to the moon and drop off supplies for the Lunar Space Station. Then she would live and work on Lunar Station for 6 months until it was time for a very special new mission. Belle was going to co-pilot the first manned mission to Mars. All of the space agencies around the world had decided to join together and build a space station on Mars. It was going to take 5 years to build, and Belle would be spending 6 months of every year in a shuttle, taking astronauts and supplies back and forth between the Moon and Mars. But it would be her dream come true. Finally, the day came when Belle hugged her family and friends goodbye and stepped inside a shuttle to fly her first mission into space. She was more excited than she had ever been in her whole life, and her family was prouder than ever. She was ready to visit her beloved moon. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off! If you would like to read extra information or do the projects mentioned in the story, there is a link down below the video to download the PDF file. Please get permission from an adult first, and then just download and print the pages you want. This story was written for a very special girl whose name really is Belle. I hope everyone enjoyed listening to it. Love from Grandma J.